Hey everyone, welcome to episode 5, our Thursday night football for week 2 preview. Unfortunately, Drew couldn't be here tonight. He's a little under the weather, so everyone send up some good vibes. Hopefully he gets better. So I'm going to cover the games this week for Thursday, and I'm going to give you a rundown on the Browns versus the Bengals. This is either going to be a very cool-looking game or a very bad-looking game because they're both pretty equally matched as far as talent level, or at least the way they've been showing. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get into it so you can see what I mean. So we'll start with the Browns right now. Their defense is currently ranked 12th this week against the Bengals. Mostly, I think, because number one, they played horrible against the Ravens. Absolutely got destroyed. But also, you would think they would need to be lower because of that. But because of who they're playing, the Bengals, Joe Burrow, granted he had a decent premiere for a rookie, he's still, making mistakes. He almost had a touchdown that got overturned with A.J. Green. So, it could go either way with Joe Burrow this week because the Browns do have a couple of cornerbacks out, one being Greedy Williams, especially a pretty decent cornerback. But anyways, they are what'd you say, DeAndre? Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm trying something a little new. So anyway, so I think that just Joe Burrow being a rookie and just a little inexperienced brings the ranking back up to 12, where it should be a little bit lower if they were playing a more experienced NFL team with a more experienced quarterback, I should say. And then Baker. So the QB, he's ranked at 26 this week. I would definitely fade him until he proves worthy enough. Otherwise, no matter what he's ranked every week, I don't think Baker has proved enough yet. He backpedals a lot. He moves a lot when he shouldn't have to. I know he's got a bad offensive line, but sometimes it just seems like he makes throws harder on himself on purpose / accident. Like he's not trying to make it hard on himself, obviously, but he's got, I don't know. It's just it's not always just sit in the pocket, deliver a good throw. He's always got to be off balance somehow, or not always, but a lot of the times. He had 189 yards last week and 1 touchdown, which that's not great numbers. It's pretty good, playing the Ravens, getting that touchdown in there. But other than that, it doesn't really impress me a whole lot with the amount of talent that they have on that team. And that brings me to the real 2 stars, I feel like, of this week are going to be Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. Hunt's ranked at 23rd and Nick Chubb's ranked at 13th. I would definitely put Nick Chubb in at least a running back 2 spot. But if you are struggling for running backs, definitely put him in your starting lineup regardless. Wherever you can fit him in, put him in. Because the Bengals' defensive line isn't that great. But for some reason, well, not for some reason, the Browns got down last week by 18 points, so they kind of abandoned the run a little bit too early, in my opinion. Other than that, I mean, Kareem Hunt got 13 touches for 74 yards. Chubb got 60 yards on 10 touches. So it showed that they were very efficient running, which is a very good sign. It just shows that they abandoned the run too quickly, in my opinion. If they would have not gotten, I feel like with their new head coach, he got a little bit scared. And he abandoned the run a little bit too early when he should have just slowed the pace down, controlled the clock, and used Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb like they're supposed to be used. Hopefully they learn that lesson, because if they can do that this week and control the clock and give Nick Chubb the lion's shares of the carries, which he's supposed to get. Bring Kareem Hunt in for spell, bring him in for more open field plays like draws, screens, little swing passes, things like that. Plays where you get him out in the open field where he works the best, and then give Nick Chubb the majority of the carries, being between the tackles and stuff like that. And you have probably the best backfield in the NFL other than the Ravens, just because they have Lamar Jackson and he brings a different dynamic to the running game. But just pure running backs, I would say the Browns have the best backfield in the NFL. Unfortunately, they just don't have the line and the quarterback to back that up. If they did, it would be a way different story. So I definitely like both of them this week, especially Nick Chubb. I think he's really going to get a lot of work. They're going to try to control the clock. They're going to try to keep Joe Burrow off the field as long as possible, keep A.J. Green, keep Joe Mixon, keep Tyler Boyd, keep all of them off the field for as long as possible, grind them down, try to play defense, but they're not great at defense, so try their best, I guess I should say. Even though I wasn't high on Baker this week, and I'm not really high on Baker until he shows me something, I do believe this is kind of a personal game for Jarvis and OBJ. As you know, they're both passionate players, and they probably, I don't know, I'm not in their head, but if I were them, I'd feel embarrassed for what happened last week. It wasn't necessarily all their fault because Odell got targeted 10 times, got only 3 receptions, but some of those misses were Baker overthrowing him. So I'm not blaming OBJ or Jarvis, but they did get the targets, which is the most important thing in a PPR league, especially. It's targets, because the more targets you get, the better chance you have, or better percentage you have at catching the ball. So that's really what stands out to me, is even though they didn't have great reception numbers, their target level was optimal. So still deserved to be in the starting wide receiver lineups. Obviously, OBJ, wide receiver 1, always, and until he proves that, until he goes on like a 5 or 6 game streak where he gets 3 points or less, I would always keep him in my wide receiver 1. Jarvis, at least a wide receiver 2. If you have a pretty good wide receiver core overall, at least put him in your flex. I feel like it'll be a really good play for you. Njoku, he is a hard fade. Apparently he hurt his knee in the game, so he's not expected to play. Austin Hooper, I also would fade. I have him projected, and we'll get to the projections of the points later, but just as of right now, I got him projected at 7 points. I think that might be a little bit even too much for what I'm thinking that they're going to do. I think they're just going to run the ball a lot. They're going to do a lot of play action, and they're going to try to get Baker better at play action because he ranked last year in efficiency out of the play action passes. So I think they're just going to run the ball a lot, get the defense to respect the run, their play action, try to get OBJ and Jarvis Landry back in the mix, back to where everything back to where it should be as far as their targets and their stats are concerned. So we got someone saying OBJ. What's up, Big Brown Man? OBJ is not a good fit for the Browns. He needs a better QB. Baker's not that good. I agree. He's not a good fit for the Browns. I think Baker's got potential. He just doesn't have the coaching staff. He hasn't. I mean, he's had coaching staff overturns, and all the ones that he's had have been terrible, and they don't really teach him much. And he's always having to learn new things it's a combination of him not getting, just the same with like Vince Young or something with the Titans. He was always getting, or the just different QBs like that. They're always, what's up, Dylan? Okay, cool. So yeah, they're always getting new people to coach them, and coaches all coach in different ways. We know that if you played any type of sport in your life. So I just think he hasn't really got a foothold because they're changing offenses, they're changing philosophies, they're changing attitudes. The only thing they aren't changing is the roster. So that's why he's struggling. But I think they're going to go back to what they were built on before this coaching staff got here, and that was to run the ball. And then have some they picked up Kareem because they could. Then they felt like they could add some dynamic plays to it with him. And I think the plan looks good on paper. They just have to put it into action now. So they need to pound it, do play action, and then get Jarvis and OBJ involved. Long story short, or short story long, however you want to look at it. So my projections this week, I got Baker at 15 points in standard and PPR. Nick Chubb I got at 14 in PPR, 12 in standard. Hunt I got 13 in PPR, 10 in standard. The 3-point difference being the catch difference, in my opinion. Jarvis, I got at 14 in PPR, 9 in standard. OBJ, 15 and 9 in standard. Those two I'm reaching a little bit in just because I think, excuse me, just because I think they do have a lot to prove. They're kind of embarrassed. They're very passionate players. So I kind of amped up their points total a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if they got like 12 or 13, something like that. But I'm just feeling in my gut that they got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder this week. And with the running game going like I believe it will, it's going to leave room for OBJ and Landry to have a better game than they had last week for sure. So, and now I'll swing over to the Bengals real quick before I give you my takeaway of the game. So Joe Burrow, I got him ranked at 17th. He's got a lot better matchup this week than he had against I believe they played the Chargers. The Chargers secondary is obviously a better secondary than what the Browns have. Last week they would have had a game-winning touchdown, but it was overturned due to a penalty, like I talked about earlier with AJ Green. So even though on paper it didn't look like he had a great game because he had an interception, and I think he had under 200 yards and no touchdowns, that didn't tell the whole story. He could have had over 200 yards or somewhere around in there, about 200 yards, at least one touchdown, and then an interception. And we would call that a pretty decent game for a rookie in their first NFL start. But because of that overturn of that touchdown, I think it paints a different picture for Joe Burrow if you don't see the context. And when you're reading stats and analysis and stuff, you have to consider the context. You can't always just look at numbers and make predictions off of that. It's got to be news articles. It's got to be watching the games, things like that. So that brings me over to AJ Green. I have him ranked 31st this week. He did lead the team in catches and targets in week 1, which is good news. And the Browns secondary, like I said, Greedy Williams and company, they're missing 2 of their good or main cornerbacks. I don't know how good you'd call them because their defense isn't that great, but yeah, they're out. So AJ Green, he didn't have like a super impressive game last week as far as points total is concerned, but he looked he looked good, and that's the most important thing. I mean, it's week 1. They didn't have a preseason. I'm not shocked that AJ Green didn't have a big points game. These games were supposed to be meant for just looking on how the players played, how quick they looked, their fast twitch, their reaction times, their form on tackling, form on catching, blocking, pass rushing, blah, 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 the whole thing. How the quarterbacks set their feet, how they throw the ball, make sure everything's on track. And they also wanted to spread the ball around to see what players that they could work in during the season. It's a big feeling out period. I feel like it'll be that way till about week 4 or 5. So before you start really taking things seriously and cementing in your mind that player plays like this, I wouldn't make any definitive decisions about any players until or not any players, but most players that at least you drafted until around week 4 or week 5, once they get used to everything. But yeah, AJ Green is ranked 31st this week. I do expect him to have a better game. Like I said, more catches, more targets, just because of the defense he's playing. The Bengals defense, it is ranked 19th this week. Again, because it's ranked towards the middle because Baker is probably going to struggle, but obviously the Bengals are weak against the running game, and Nick Chubb is going to have a field day. And I think Kareem Hunt's going to have a pretty good day as well. I think they're just going to be able to do whatever they want with them with their running backs, and then maybe surprise them a couple of times down the field with OBJ or something like that. So Joe Mixon, he's probably going to be my most surprising person this week, in my opinion. I don't see him doing as well as other people see him doing. Like, he's ranked 14th. And over the last 4 games, he's averaged over 104 yards, which is 3rd best among running backs in the NFL. And the Browns have given up an average of 129 yards per game in their last 4 games, which is the 4th worst. And that's to running backs. So on paper, it looks like Joe Mixon is ready for a breakout game because he didn't do great last week. But I think that well, let me go to Tyler Boyd. I'll get that out, and then I'll tell you why I kind of disagree with some of these projections. So Tyler Boyd ranked 39th. He had 5 targets, caught 4 of them. He had a tough matchup with the Chargers secondary. It is pretty decent. But he did see, or at least I saw good chemistry with him and Joe Burrow. And we saw last year he's very capable of being a wide receiver 1 on a team with a bad quarterback. And he performed last year. So, with all that being said, though, I don't see Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd, AJ Green, Joe Burrow having this, because the Browns defense is bad, having this breakout game where they score 15, 20, 25, 30 points. I just don't see that in this game. Not because the Bengals aren't good. They're totally capable of it. But because their defense is bad and the Browns are really good running the ball, they just abandoned it too early last week. I mean, Chubb had 6 yards per carry if you do the average, and Hunt, I'm not good at math off the top of my head, but 13 carries for 74 yards. I would say that's about the same yards per carry. So it's obviously there. They just have to do it. And when you run the ball like that so successfully, you're just going to keep doing it over and over and over and over, and they're going to control the time of possession. I think the Bengals last week had a little under 60 total plays, and if you add up the targets and of Tyler Boyd, of Joe Mixon, of AJ Green, and if you average in the 19 carries Joe Mixon had, the number of pass attempts that Joe Burrow had, it equals almost the exact amount that you need just from these players, the amount of plays that their entire team ran on offense. Obviously, Joe was out there for every one of them, but or Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon wasn't out there for all of them, and so on and so forth. But the fact that out of the majority of their offensive snaps, these three players, if you just don't consider Joe Burrow because he's always out there, they got the majority of the game plan, and they turned it into what they did, which was underperform. So I believe that the Browns, with their running game, are going to hold them off the field even more. So I expect their averages, or not their averages, but their projected points to drop a little bit more than what some people have them on, just because they're not going to be on the field as much. If it ends up turning into the Browns can't run the ball and they end up getting into a shootout as far as Baker's got to throw on third down a lot and all that stuff, then the Bengals have a chance as far as getting points on the board, because they do have John Ross waiting in the wings. I'm just not sold on him yet, just because I haven't really seen much of him. He's always hurt or something is going on with him. But when he gets the ball, he can be very dangerous. He's super fast. So, and he's got a very favorable matchup this week. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're in a deep league, a sneaky flex maybe would be John Ross if you want to take a chance, if you want to gamble a little bit, because he's got a pretty good matchup this week. But so for points, Joe Burrow, I would say probably about the same as Baker, like 15, around 15 to 17, depending on how many possessions the Bengals get. A.J. Green in PPR got him at 12 points, and then 8 in standard. Joe Mixon, I have him at about 12 points in PPR, some of them being probably like 3 catches or something like that, and then I have him at 10 in standard. Tyler Boyd, 11 points in PPR and 7 in standard, again because of just the catch difference. So those are the predictions that I have as far as points totals and the game script. And just so my takeaway from this game, I have a few points about the game to kind of help you see whether or not you want to pick up these players, where you want to put them, or if you want to leave them on the waivers. Mixon, he definitely needs to step up, even though he looked good. Joe Burrow impressed last week, but he still makes rookie plays sometimes, which is not anything against him. It's going to happen. But I would definitely leave him on your bench for a while until he starts getting used to the game a little bit more. He needs to take the next step and show that he can dominate subpar teams like the Browns. So a week like this would be a great week for him to step up and show that he can dominate teams like the Ravens showed. And that would give not only him but his team more credibility in the eyes of people like me and things like that, because the Ravens showed up and they handled business. They not only made sure they won, they made sure they won in convincing fashion, because they want to send a message, and I think that's what the Bengals need to do, is send a message. The Browns also have a lot to prove in everything. It will completely anger everybody in that front office, and the coach will immediately be in the hot seat if they go 0-2 right out the gate. So they have a lot to prove in every aspect. Baker's got stuff to prove, the passing game in general, the running game, the new tight end, Austin Hooper, especially with Njoku going to be out. I say from last week, Baker needs at least 250 to 225, 250, and at least 2 touchdowns to redeem himself and the perception of how he plays, which is kind of sporadic and not too. And I want to say not intelligent, but it's more he tries to be instinctual, and his instincts aren't that great. if that makes sense. So he's got to show his coaches that he's able to stand in the pocket, make intelligent plays, logical throws, and be efficient with the football and throw at least 2 touchdowns, just to show that you're able to be consistent. I think he's got a lot to prove this year, and especially in this game. Landry and OBJ need to get they need to stay as involved, even probably get a little bit more involved if they have time for that. But they need to stay a big focus of their team because that, again, opens up the running game. They both help each other. The better Nick Chubb does, the more times that they can do play action and the defense is going to bite. And OBJ and Jarvis are going to get their shots down the field or over the middle or something like that. And when they get the ball, I mean, they can go crazy. So I think they need to keep targeting them. Don't give up. But Baker needs to hit his shots when he's got them because he missed some of them last week. Hunt can and will be an X factor for the Browns with his catching ability. Like I said, I feel like they should put him majority into plays that put him out in open space, even if it's behind the line of scrimmage. Just get him the ball in open space. He can break tackles. He can make yards happen out of nothing. So I expect him to be the X factor of the offense, not Austin Hooper's acquisition or Njoku, even if he was healthy. The X factor, the one that's really going to make a difference in the game. Obviously, OBJ and Jarvis and Nick Chubb if they don't play well, the team's probably not going to win. But the guy that really puts them over the edge and gives them a solid advantage is Kareem Hunt because of how talented he is in everything that he does as far as in the passing game and in open space. And Nick Chubb as well, he needs to step up against a very subpar running defense and to show that he deserves the number 1 spot after Kareem Hunt not only out-touched him but out-rushed him just by a little bit, like 3 touches and like 14 extra yards or something like that. But still, they're splitting it 50-50. So I think Nick Chubb needs to kind of be a little bit more aggressive and take that ball in his hands when he gets a shot and really turn it into something and solidify himself as the running back on that team. And Kareem Hunt can contribute a lot, just like James White and Sony Michel. Sony's definitely the running back 1. James White contributes a lot in the passing game. I feel like they can make a dynamic like that, and it would be really decent. It would help Baker out a whole lot. Hooper, to me, didn't show enough to earn Baker's trust. Baker obviously prefers Njoku, but he got hurt. And even when Njoku got hurt, Baker didn't rely on Austin Hooper as his first tight end target. He would throw to other people before that. So with Njoku being out, Hooper's obviously going to get more snaps this year. So or until Njoku comes back, not the whole season, but it just depends on when he does come back. So obviously he's got more opportunities. We'll just see how it works. It worked in Atlanta, so I don't know why for some reason all of a sudden he's not doing much in Cleveland, but I'm not there, obviously. And their situation altogether, I don't think they've really figured themselves out yet. I think it'll take a little while. But if they make themselves a team of identity to run the ball and just control the clock, I think they'll have more success than trying to be this high-flying OBJ, Jarvis Landry power show where everyone's getting touchdowns left and right. Like, they're good to have to keep a defense honest, and it's good to have weeks where you can just keep throwing stuff down the field to open up the box for Chubb. But I don't think that should be their focus. I think Chubb should be the one to set the pace to set up Hunt, to set up OBJ, to set up Jarvis Landry. That's the key. And as far as the Bengals are concerned, their keys are just spreading the ball around. Joe Mixon is like Kareem Hunt. He can do it all. He can catch. He can run. Fortunately for him, he's the starter. He doesn't have to back up someone like Nick Chubb. So he's one of a cast of very dangerous people. John Ross, we don't hear a lot about him, but when he gets the ball or just he's on the field in general, he's a threat because he's so fast, so quick too. But he just for some reason doesn't show much when he's out there. Then they got A.J. Green, who's finally healthy and he's starting to come back slowly but surely. Tyler Boyd, he could be easily a number one on like the Lions or the Bears. Well, not the Bears. She's not better than Allen Robinson, but close. He could rival him. But anyway, my point is they got a really good two wide receivers out there. And a very dynamic running back. And Joe Burrow obviously is very talented with his 46 rushing yards. He showed that he's competent, he's capable, he understands, he can read defenses and to where he's at in his development and in his career. So I got a lot of high hopes from him. I don't see not either one of them really like going crazy in this game, but this is going to be a good game to feel out kind of who they are, not only as players, but the team in general, who they are in their identity. And if, they're on the same page with it. So, yeah, that's my take on the game. I think we got a question or two questions in the comments. So first question, how's AP going to do? I'm going to save that for the Sunday slate matchup show that we do. But to be honest, I didn't expect AP to get 92 yards last week. So I don't know. Let me dig into that a little bit more. And I'll give the, my previews and stuff like that on Sunday when we air the show before the game starts. So, but if they keep using him how he's using them, I mean, obviously he can still get 90-plus yards. So, yeah, 100 total. I mean, he's shown he still does it. So, I mean, he can still do it. But who knows? They pay Matt Stafford a lot of money. They consider themselves a throwing team. But, they're sans one wide receiver. They're minus one receiver. So, I don't know. The Lions are weird. They're a very weird team. Matt Patricia doesn't know who he is or what he is. They're confusing. And then we got another one from Dylan. Hunt could be a good flex if he can be put in that spot in fantasy. Yeah, I agree. Depends on what your team looks like. My suggestions on if someone needs to be faded or put in a flex or putting in a starting spot like running back 1 or 2 or something like that. That's not take what I say and make your lineup that. Obviously, you're not going to have some of these players I'm talking about. Some of you might have multiple players that I talk about. You really have to do what's best considering what your lineup looks like. If you are good in so for my team, I have wide receivers. For my wide receivers, I have Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, and then I actually just got Juju on a trade. And then I got some wide receiver 3 that I don't. He's just a safety valve essentially. So if I had Kareem Hunt, I probably am not going to put him in my flex just because I have DeAndre Hopkins. If Michael Thomas wasn't hurt, I should say. Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins. I also have Nick Chubb to go with David Johnson and I play multiple fantasy lineups, so I'm sorry. Let me look at my So I got David Johnson and Christian McCaffrey at my running backs, and then DeAndre Hopkins and Juju right now as my receivers. So if I had Kareem Hunt on my team, I also have Nick Chubb too. But if I had Kareem Hunt, I wouldn't put him in my flex because I got Nick Chubb in my flex. So it just depends on what your bench looks like. But yeah, if you got Kareem Hunt and you have already a decent amount, like a decent running back 1 and 2, and your receiver game is a little bit low, and you're on your bench, for that matter, then yeah, Kareem Hunt, because he'll get you those receptions, not as much as wide receivers will, obviously, but he's going to see the field more because he runs the ball too. So obviously PPR backs, in my opinion, take importance in the PPR leagues, just because they're on the field more. They're not just on the field to catch the ball. They're on the field that they could either run the ball or catch the ball. So yeah, he is a very good flex option. I agree. He probably always will this season. There'll be some games where they'll shut him down for sure, but if he's right for your type of team, then yeah, I think he's definitely flex worthy the entire season for sure. So, all right, everybody. So that is my take on it. Apologies if it wasn't as great as possible. Drew's actually, you see who the talent is on our squad. He's very sorely missed. Anyway, we hope he feels better. Hope you guys like my projections. If you agree with them, let me know. If you disagree, let me know. And as always, come with us if you want to win. And we'll see you on Sunday morning for the Sunday slate matchups. Peace.